This podcast is an invitation to feel and experience the souls of famous old Hollywood homes and to have an in-depth journey to the areas where they're located through interviews with longtime residents. Either you're a fan of old Hollywood in Los Angeles, planning to have a vacation, or, an even bigger step, considering a certain area for your future home. This is your opportunity to receive valuable information and insightful advice you won't find anywhere else.
Hello, and welcome to my podcast. Are you in the mood for California? Today we'll feel and experience the score of Los Angeles, featuring an interview with incredible Catherine Joy.
It felt like coming home, honestly. The interesting thing about LA is that the landscape, the trees there's a lot of gum trees here. There's a lot of similarities to Australia and to parts of Tasmania, like the rolling hills, especially the gum trees, of course, the water. Being from Tasmania, I'm an island baby, and so I'm all about the ocean. And also just like being how LA is directly on the ocean, the same ocean that washes up on the shores of Australia. So there was a lot of home in LA, which honestly surprised me. But the thing I also love about it is it's just so big.
Masha Korpacheva is a California-based realtor and a member of the National Association of Realtors in Los Angeles. She's an advocate for selling and buying homes with soul and practicing mindfulness in real estate. With master's degrees in spiritual psychology and linguistics, Masha brings all of her skills to work with her clients. An intuit and empath, she has touched many lives with her outstanding ability to see beyond the visible and helping to come to better understanding of issues and their resolutions. An adventurous world traveler, from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania to exploring the Galapagos Islands, Masha has a particular passion for the City of Angels. Having landed in this paradise and adopted it as her home, she's been sharing old Hollywood stories since 2007. In the mood for California, feel the soul of old Hollywood.
And now, are you ready to experience the score of Los Angeles? There is something about Los Angeles that you can't quite name, but you can feel it. Maybe it's the sun, or the sprawling horizon, or maybe, just maybe, it's the sound, because every city has a soundtrack, but Los Angeles has a symphony. From the earliest days of Hollywood's golden age, this city has been shaped by people who came here chasing something, often not fame, but freedom. A freedom to imagine, to experiment, to create, and nowhere is that more true than in the world of music. Let's go back to the 1930s. At the height of the Great Depression and just before the outbreak of World War II, a wave of European composers fled fascism and persecution, especially Jewish artists escaping Nazi Germany. Some of them landed in Los Angeles, a city that had barely begun to find its identity. Among them was Austrian-born composer Erich Wolfgang Korngold, who had been hailed as a prodigy in Vienna and invited to score films for Warner Brothers. He brought with him the grandeur of romantic opera and symphonic structure, and his work on the adventures of Robin Hood earned him an Academy Award in 1938. Korngold is often credited with inventing the modern film score, lush, emotional, full of leitmotifs. His music didn't just accompany the movie, it told its own story. And he was not alone. Miklos Rozsa, Franz Waxman, Max Steiner, all émigrés, all masters of classical traditions, also found a new purpose in Hollywood's dream machine. Max Steiner, in fact, composed the legendary score for Gone with the Wind and Casablanca, and was one of the first to use a full symphony orchestra in film. These composers lived in the Hollywood Hills, walked Sunset Boulevard, and gathered at places like the Los Angeles Philharmonic at the Hollywood Bowl. They turned the city into an unlikely cradle for orchestral innovation. But this history isn't just about the great men of Europe. It's also about the women who carved a space for themselves in a field that wasn't built with them in mind, often working behind the scenes but shaping the very sound of cinema. One of the most influential of these trailblazers was Shirley Walker. For several years, she wrote jingles and composed for industrial films. Not glamorous work, but it was where she honed her craft. Her entry into feature film scoring came in 1979 when she was hired to play synthesizer on Carmine Coppola's iconic score for Apocalypse Now. Her haunting textures are woven through scenes like Dulong and the Delta, lending a surreal edge to the already visionary film. That same year, she collaborated again with Coppola on The Black Stallion, orchestrating the score and contributing original cues. These early credits, listed as additional music by or composed by, marked the official beginning of her Hollywood career and placed her among the very few women scoring major studio films at the time. Shirley Walker didn't just compose. She orchestrated, conducted, and led recording sessions with a mastery that earned her deep respect in a male-dominated industry. She went on to score beloved films and TV series, including Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, Final Destination, and The Flash, and mentored a new generation of composers. Shirley Walker was part of a small but groundbreaking circle of women who helped define the sound of modern media. Wendy Carlos, a pioneer of electronic music, famously created the Moog synthesized score for A Clockwork Orange and The Shining, breaking ground in both gender and sound. Rachel Elkind, her longtime collaborator, produced those very scores. Susan Ciani, known for her mesmerizing synthesizer compositions, composed music for TV, film, and early video games, and later became one of the first women to score a major Hollywood film using electronic instruments. As film changed, so did its sound. By the 1970s, with the rise of New Hollywood, scores became edgier, more experimental. LA studios were buzzing with analog synths, jazz quartets, and pop-infused orchestration. And by the time the indie boom of the 90s hit, composers like Thomas Newman, Danny Elfman, and Mark Mothersbaugh had redefined what it meant to score for emotion and mood, not just narrative. What's especially unique about Los Angeles is how the city's collage-like nature, its blend of cultures, rhythms, and contradictions, finds its echo in the music created here. From a mariachi band playing at Olvera Street to experimental electronica in a Silver Lake loft, LA doesn't have a single sound. It has thousands, layered and living. And through all of this, Los Angeles has continued to be a sanctuary for the imaginative soul. Artists come here from everywhere, from small towns and distant countries, often with nothing but a suitcase, an idea, and the audacity to believe that they have something to say. They find community in places like the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music, the ASCAP Scoring Workshop, Joanne Kane Music Services, and rehearsal rooms tucked away in Burbank and Santa Monica. They teach, they collaborate, they compose in between gigs. They create scores not only for movies, but for podcasts, games, dance, and virtual worlds. And in this space, somewhere between a deadline and a dream, the next movement of Los Angeles is always being written. And here we are. Welcome to Los Angeles. I'm absolutely delighted to have Catherine Joy here with me. Catherine Joy is a Tasmanian composer working in Hollywood. She has received multiple awards, including Best Doc Score for Gold Balls and the SCL David Raksin Emerging Talent Award for Home is a Hotel. She scored numerous films for Reel One Entertainment and Lifetime, and composed additional music for projects from Disney, Netflix, HBO, Hulu, Sony, Discovery, and History Channel. Catherine is CEO of Joy Music House, past president of the AWFC, and adjunct faculty for the NYU Screen Scoring Masters. And today, Catherine opens up about her path as a composer and how her life and work have become part of Los Angeles' ever-unfolding soundtrack. Hello, Catherine.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh my God, thank you so much for finding the time in your super busy schedule to have this conversation with me today.
It has been a little crazy.
Yes, it has been. You're a very busy composer. So, Catherine, there is something very unique about you. You were actually born and raised in Tasmania, and it's a place known for its natural beauty and a sense of quiet isolation. It is actually so remote. It is so far from LA. And yet you find yourself here. Can you please take us back to what it actually felt like, maybe deep in your soul, when you first set foot in Los Angeles? What stirred inside you as you made that leap across the world, literally?
Well, LA was really it felt like coming home, honestly. The interesting thing about LA is that the landscape, the trees there's a lot of gum trees here. There's a lot of similarities to Australia and to parts of Tasmania, like the rolling hills, especially the gum trees, of course, the water. Being from Tasmania, I'm an island baby, and so I'm all about the ocean. And also just like being how LA is directly on the ocean, the same ocean that washes up on the shores of Australia. So there was a lot of home in LA, which honestly surprised me. But the thing I also love about it is it's just so big. And the thing that was always challenging for me, for the unique aspect of me, is that Tasmania was always so small, especially people-wise. It's not as small as people think. It's around the size of West Virginia for Americans who want that comparison, but population-wise, 500,000 people, and everyone knows everyone. It's very much that thing. And my parents and my family were quite well known both through the music and the Christian church community growing up. So I lived a very known life by a lot of people, and I love the anonymity of the big city. So it's interesting because I didn't come directly from Tasmania to LA. I started off, did a few years on the East Coast in the Northern Virginia area where I lived with a family there. I found that area very overwhelming when I moved there, just because it's very much, suburban sprawl. And there was no sense for me of a center, which I found really frustrating. I just felt like I spent all the time on 66 or the 95s, the 395, 295, 195. Like, it was just crazy over there. And then I moved to Seattle and I spent 12 years there. And that was a lot better for me because Seattle is almost like a macro version of Hobart, where I'm from, Hobart, Tasmania. They're both port towns, on the water. They have a mountain behind them. In Tasmania, we have a very small mountain called Mount Wellington. Of course, Mount Rainier is much bigger. But it was funny because after 12 years in Seattle, it's still quite a small city. And I was really feeling like I was busting at the seams. And, there just wasn't enough new things to try or new places to go. And it wasn't working for me. And coming to LA, I don't feel like I will ever fully discover LA just because it's so massive and there's so many amazing little communities that you get to discover and so many people. And, with this almost like the turnings of the tides with people moving in and moving out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. There's so much about LA that I absolutely adore. And then, of course, the fact that, the film community here kind of lives and breathes and you see it everywhere. And you go on a hike to Runyon Canyon or Griffith Park and you pass by people and their conversations are about the industry and you're in an Uber and the driver's trying to pitch you their script and your waiter, you recognize from a TV show. I mean, everything is industry, it's really wonderful. I love it.
Yes. It looks like you found your own world in
Definitely.
Los Angeles.
And being in Tasmania, I was just like, from a very young age, just, desperate to, Tassie is so beautiful and I love my family. I have a great family in Tassie and great friends, and it's a stunningly beautiful place. And it was almost sad to me that I couldn't appreciate living there, but I just wanted to leave. I feel like I joke that I kind of drooled every time I saw a plane flying by because I just wanted to fly out of there. And that's exactly what I did as soon as I graduated high school.
Wow. And it was still a pretty bold and courageous act, actually, because you were leaving the familiarity of Tasmania, the place where you were born and grew up. And what was that moment, actually, that you knew deep down that you actually had to follow this calling, that music would be your life's work, no matter where it took you?
Well, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to move to America. I don't know how. I think we had Americans in our life from a very early age, and it's just something I've always known. I think I appreciated that the culture of America was a better fit for me than the culture of Australia. And then as far as music goes, my mom is a concert pianist, choir director, composer, phenomenal musician, the consummate performer. And it wasn't really a choice. I feel like the beginning, as soon as I was born, there was such a similarity between me and mom. And, I was chosen to follow in her footsteps. My siblings also learned instruments and were wonderful young musicians, but they definitely had more of a bent toward, science and the humanities. My brother got his PhD in political science and human ethics, and my sister in computational chemistry. So they were more on the science and humanities side of things. And to me, I was chosen to follow in mom's footsteps. And I was fine with that, in that I understood music was right for me, but also from, I think probably when I was a teenager onwards, I knew that I wasn't going to be following her exact path. I knew I wasn't a performer, and that was really it. And being a composer was not actually like a job on the music jobs, It was, we didn't really talk about it much then. We studied composers, but they were all dead and men and wonderful. I still study them. I still love them, but it wasn't, a current job. So then I was trying to figure out where I fit in the performing world and how to set myself apart from my mom, which is why I initially went into jazz, and through jazz discovered composition. But jazz was kind of my first step off the, of the printed page of writing what was put in front of you. I mean, performing what was put in front of you. So, it really took me a long time to figure that out. And, my mom, she's never been like that negative image of the stage mom. She really, her music always came, just from a love of music and a love of connection with other people through music. And I definitely have that. And I really appreciated everything she was trying to do for me and bring to the table, while also knowing that I couldn't be her. And I had to figure out my own way. And, the world of music is so vast that it took me quite a while to figure out where I really was supposed to be within it.
Yes. And it's quite a step to actually really know exactly who you are. It's probably the first thing you need to figure out. And then you're able to find your place in this vast world, as you mentioned.
Yeah. And I think, the thing that maybe we do today that isn't great is we do put a lot of pressure on people to figure it out quite early. And it takes time, and I think one lesson I learned through that whole experience, because I only really, really committed to composition and media composition when I was in my early 30s. And but there was such a benefit to the journey that got me there. I learned so much along the way that when I arrived at film scoring, I had all these skills that absolutely benefited that next stage of my life. And, the journey of exploration into where you should be is just as valuable as finding out where you should be. And then where you fit in this world may change because we are always changing. And so it's allowing yourself that grace to be on the search and continue the search, even when you think you figured it out.
That's true. Very, very true. And you have built your career that blends both music, collaboration, and storing, and across the film, television, live performance. So what is it about the intersection of music and narrative that speaks to you most powerfully as an artist?
Yeah, this is a great question because my instruments growing up were voice and violin. I was a classically trained singer initially and then moved into jazz, and a violinist, which are very much, kind of front leading positions, in the orchestra or in the choir or whatever. And I hated it, I was good at it, but I didn't really want to be the lead, honestly. Like I kind of wanted to be the bass player in the back. I always envied that position. And when I discovered scoring for film, the thing that I loved about it was the collaborative nature, the fact that the music is serving picture and that you're part of a team. And, it's not, the composer's vision comes into it, but the composer is really fulfilling the director's vision and making it come to life musically. And that aspect of collaboration, really took the loneliness. I think I found, even though I did music with my mom and with so many great people growing up, I did find it quite lonely. And it's interesting now because I still spend a lot of time, on we call it our rig, my computer with my software, like writing music here at home by myself, but, with my cats, of course. But because I'm part of a team, because I'm constantly checking in with my director and talking to the editor and the rest of the team, it feels like a collaboration. It's not lonely at all. You get to see the finished product with the whole team. You get to be part of this big thing with all these people. And for me, the community aspect of film scoring is so precious. And that's really what I connected with when I made this shift.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I like the way you describe it, the community aspect of film scoring, really being part of something big, having this collaboration with other people. Looks like this is your own community in this vast world, in this huge city as Los Angeles, that allows you to be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's so special. Well, your scores have accompanied stories that range from deeply personal documentaries to whimsical romantic comedies. That's quite a range. So how do you approach tuning into the emotional heartbeat of each project? And what does it feel like when you know that you've done the perfect musical voice for a story?
Well, it's so cool working on a range of projects. And it's incredible scoring documentaries because, you get to be a part of someone's real life story that happened. One project was Prognosis and Prognosis Notes on Living. And that was a story of this a filmmaker who, when she was diagnosed with cancer, she decided, because she's a documentary filmmaker, she decided to document the whole process. And we go through her entire process of dealing with cancer through the end of her life. And, that was definitely the first project I've done where, she chose to, she wanted her, what was left of her body to be on camera briefly, like at the end of the project, like you saw the whole thing. And it was beautiful and heartbreaking and such an honor to be part of that, telling that story, a story that, so many people, too many people can relate to, both from either being the person with cancer or being part of the community around the person with cancer, whether it's the primary partner, the friends, the family, the children, the siblings. So that was an incredibly precious process because there was her community, Deborah's community. They were all part of the group of producers. There was quite a large group of producers on this. So they had worked it out where I talked directly with Kate, who is the primary director and the editor. So I had a conversation with those two. But then Kate would go back and talk to this whole collective of filmmakers who had worked with Deborah and who loved her and who are in the film on her journey. And so it was pretty intense, and that was definitely a project where like every single note was examined, but appropriately so. And so these experiences are just incredible. And then, you go to the other extreme of like rom-coms, which are just so much fun to do. I've done a whole bunch of romantic comedies for Real One Entertainment, which is a Canadian company directed by a Miami director, Jacobo. And they're so fun. They're really great. I love that the lead woman is always just a powerhouse. She doesn't need no man to save her. So it's like they're very, very woke, but they're super fun. And and I love it. I love scoring comedy and fictional comedy. It's a blast and such a variety of music. So that range, I think, really keeps you awake, keeps you on your toes, keeps you honing your skills and also learning the language of every director. Every director has a very different vocabulary. Two directors will say, I want this to sound romantic or I want this to sound dramatic. But what that means to them is very unique to the other director, that you may be talking to. And it may also be different to what you consider romantic or dramatic. So it's like learning, getting inside each director's head and figuring out their vocabulary and going from there is a massive challenge, but it's so much fun. And it's like I feel like film scoring is very much about strategy. It's like it's working out a puzzle. How do you make the music, bring to life what's happening on the screen instead of taking away from it or trampling over it or slowing it down. So definitely, a great puzzle to be figured out every time.
Yes. And it sounds like you have to be very intuitive and very accepting of whatever comes your way as you're trying to read into these tiniest facets of emotions that a director is trying to convey to you, or what you're reading from a script itself and from the environment. And you really have to be raw in your heart to be able to bring it all together. It's like almost like a psychic in some way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're spot on. Intuitive. Absolutely. I love that you said accepting, because sometimes you write something that you love and you're like, oh, this is so great. I love how it works picture. This is so me. Like, I feel like I'm really writing my music. And then they're like, it's beautiful, but it doesn't work for me at all. And you just have to accept that, because it's their project, and they're hiring you to fulfill their vision. And, what I always tell, I teach a lot of younger up and coming composers, and I tell them that number one, like, you love that piece of music. It's your piece of music. It's not going in the film. So, you can have solace in the fact that you wrote a piece of music that you loved. It's not a waste of time. But you do have to be raw, because you have to put aside all your own priorities or, sometimes your own instincts that are clearly not aligned with the director, and then figure out what they're going for and try to align with that. And it definitely it does, require a certain amount of psychic, intuitive work. It's kind of crazy. And the best way to talk about music is, of course, with music. So, often filmmakers will temp their project with another piece of music. So going back to that and being like, what about this really worked for you? Like, asking all those questions, that kind of 20 questions that get you to the heart of the matter.
Yes. And not only asking the questions, but also listening to what they're telling you.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about listening. And it's not about you. It's about them. So it really is putting them first. And I tell my filmmakers just to share anything, like to not hold back. If there's someone who loves to write, just write me a long email about, just like kind of like stream of consciousness. And I literally keep those words up on my screen as I'm composing as a frame of reference for what I'm writing. It's a great way to connect with what's going on in their head.
Yes.
So yeah, it's tricky.
What a gift you give to all the people that you work with, because I think in life, in general, the biggest gift one human being can give to another is to actually listen to them, being fully present, being fully mindful of what the other person is sharing with you. Because we always have this noise in our mind, like our own thoughts, our own ideas. And this is probably what deters us from fully being present and understand what the other human being is trying to tell us. And this is the biggest gift that we can give to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. To listen and then to, it's so exciting when you write something to a scene and it's just spot on. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's it. Nothing beats that that moment, like, the success and the relief and the joy in really aligning, both of our creative points of view together to create something like that. It's so exciting.
Yes. And you sound like a very wise artist. And I'm sure that your journey has not been a straight line. Maybe you can share a moment in your career when you actually faced a very significant challenge and how this experience shaped you both as a composer and as a person.
So many challenges. I'm an immigrant to this country, so that was always a challenge. I had to wait a long time. I really wanted to go to school here and study here because I did my undergraduate in jazz music and I had to wait for all this visa stuff to be worked out. And so it took me a while before I was even eligible to study in America, and I kind of had to wait. I've actually quit music twice.
Wow.
The first time was in that period where I was waiting for my green card to get finalized and all of that to work out. And I just got so frustrated with, I just felt so lost and just, disillusioned, I think, and exhausted. And I think exhaustion is always a big part of it. So I went and worked for, I got an admin job, which has always kind of been my backup. And one of my superpowers is my administrative and management background. Got an admin job in a healthcare company. And it was, I met a lot of great people, but it was absolutely soul destroying. I'm in one of those absolutely bizarre situations where my parents have always been happiest when I'm working in music and saddest when I'm working a real job, making money.
That's very unusual.
Very unusual. So my whole family and my friends were, concerned about me when I had this job and my green card and everything finally got figured out, which the first thing I did was actually go home to Tasmania and just spend a little bit of time with my family. And that was a great reset for me. And when I came back, I applied. I got back into the jazz scene in Seattle and I applied for school. So that was the first time. And then interestingly enough, after I finished that degree, again, when you go to school for music, it can really wear you down. And I think people also sometimes experience that when they start pursuing whatever their artistic thing is for money. That can also be initially disillusioning if you have like an unbalanced or an exhausting situation. So after I finished my undergrad, I quit music again. And, and I went and worked a wind energy company that time. And again, met so many great people. And it was another really good reset. And that was actually the best one because in that time, it really allowed me to, now that I was a bit older, I was heading into my 30s and, it allowed me to rebuild my relationship with music, which I think was really important at that point. By that point, I'd had, my mom as one of my biggest mentors, and I had a few other very significant mentors in my life who all have such a massive influence and have their own journey. And it was important for me to take a step back and start to figure out my own path and how I was going to do it in a way that fit me. And I didn't stay away from music that long, but I was able to kind of ease back into it slowly while working a day job and just took the time to figure it out. And I'm really grateful for that because it really was a preparation to the point where, I'd gotten to this point. I started teaching music at an elementary school, which also was definitely not the right fit. Teaching 5-year-olds, 5-year-olds with percussion instruments at 8 a.m. is not my jam.
Well, it wakes you up for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It just makes you want to drink. But I was, at that point, I was just like, I need to be composing for a living. And how do you do that? And then I literally got an email in my inbox about this 1 night a week film scoring class. And I was also doing my master's at that point remotely from Boston University for, a master's in music education. And I was working full time as a music teacher and just so overcommitted. But I saw this email and I just had a feeling that that was it, and when I went to the first class of that 1 night a week film scoring certificate program and just started initially understanding what film scoring was, it was completely a light bulb moment, and it like a life-changing moment. I felt this wash of relief because I really felt like I had discovered what I was supposed to be doing. And also I had an understanding that everything I'd done to that point wasn't a waste, as I said earlier, was going to aid me on this new chapter. But there was just so much struggle that led up to that. And, I'm not one of these people that figured it out when I was 21, and I think that's most of us. I think that's a false narrative that's pretty unusual, and I think there's a real benefit to figuring out your journey in your 30s and 40s when you've had that time to develop.
And if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self going through all these challenges, what would that be?
I think when we're young, we have this fear of failure, that if you fail, you're just going to screw everything up so magnificently and there will be no coming back from it. And as someone who's had to restart my life a few times, what it's taught me is that, if you make a bad decision, you of course deal with the consequences, but then you just make another decision. And it's really that simple. And so to I would tell myself to learn how to extend grace to myself. Do your best, but if you screw it up, we'll just figure it out and keep going. Like, we can rise from the ashes multiple times. The resilience of humans is pretty remarkable. And and I think that's a lot easier when you have taken the time and energy to invest in the people around you, which is something my parents taught me and something that I've done my whole life. I think from the beginning, following their example, is building community everywhere I went. And that has always been my safety net, investing in people. And then when you need them, they're there because you've been there for them. So I don't think I need to tell my younger self that because she did it. But I would encourage her to realize and lean into the benefit of that, and just to keep being kind to yourself.
Yes. And it's so powerful. Catherine, I'm so grateful to you for finding the time to share this incredible journey that you've had in the world of music and in your own world of traveling all the way from Tasmania to America and finding your place, finding your community in Los Angeles that allows you to really spread your wings and have this connection that you have always longed for. And in some way, being anonymous in this big city, and yet contributing to this big city in a huge way with your art of music. So thank you so much for doing that.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. This is a great conversation.
Thank you, Catherine. I enjoyed it very much, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon again.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you very much for tuning in to feel and experience the score of Los Angeles with my special guest, Catherine Joy. If you enjoy my podcast, In the Mood for California, please sign up for future episodes at your preferred platform, and please leave your feedback. I really appreciate your time and support. You can follow me on Instagram at In the Mood for California, and check out my website, www.inthemoodforcalifornia.com. Selling and buying homes with soul is not just my real estate strategy. It's an intuitive and holistic approach that embraces your values, aspirations, and conscious intentions. If you want to discover the power of mindfulness in your real estate journey with my compassionate guidance, I'm here for you. Next time, we'll explore a corner of Los Angeles that quietly holds its own rhythm, Torrance, a city where ocean breeze meets neighborhood charm, where everyday life feels a little softer and inspiration hides in plain sight. So looking forward to seeing you there.
In the mood for California, feel the soul of Old Hollywood.